Hey everybody. Welcome to episode 45 of MAME Politics. How's everybody doing today? On this fine Thursday afternoon. Or early evening, I guess, more like it. Everybody good? Hey Andy. Hey Tom. How are you? Hey Carl. So this game I'm playing right now is called Rail Chase, made by Sega, never got a home release, and came out in 1995. And for some reason the sequel to it is a lot more popular. It was a 3D polygonal style game. This was one of the last games that Sega made that was what's considered a 3D two-dimensional sprite game. 2D sprite-based 3D gameplay style. Even though this is a rail shooter, it uses the same kind of technique that Space Harrier and Outrun and various other Sega games use. And one of the other games actually one of the other games that came out that's using the same style is Jurassic Park, which I also want to play for you guys at some point because it's really cool. And it's actually really funny. It almost has nothing to do with the movie. It's just you're just blowing away dinosaurs the whole time in a Jeep. Which is pretty rad. Hey Terra Toddler, hey Obnovs, hey David, hey Isabel, hey Soulman, hey John, hey No Name. Smashy Trashy 100, hello, how's it going? I don't think I've seen you here in the chat before. If you've been lurking, welcome. Shane Lindbergh says, I've been waiting all day for this. Here we go. I love this game too, Robbie. Did you remember the rollerblading game Skitchin for Sega? Of course. That game is pretty fucking funny. It has a really hard metal, like punk hardcore soundtrack, using like really low quality Sega Genesis guitar samples, which I find funny. It also sort of in the lineage of Road Rash, right? I mean, it's kind of like a similar style game where it's like about combat, but you're racing at the same time. I don't really remember too well. Like you kick other skitchers off of like the backs of other vehicles and stuff in that game. I'm going to play a little more of this Rail Chase while more of you guys are popping in here. This game, it just looks really cool to me. And I love... however these games were designed, it's such a cool concept to think that they would devise all these 2D sprites, for a 3D gameplay mechanic like this. I don't know if you can tell by a lot of my commentary on this channel, but I don't care for 3D graphics that much, and I never really have. Ever since... things went from ray tracing to like Quake. So for example, like I prefer the graphics of Doom to Quake because they are two-dimensional sprites used for all the enemies and the weapons and things like that. I never really cared for 3D graphics, and I've always felt that they fell short of the mark in terms of like what they did for me aesthetically. Until very, very recently with games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and other PS4 games. I feel like 3D graphics are finally reaching the point where they're actually like really beautifully done and aesthetically pleasing in a way that doesn't look hokey to me. But I have an affinity for these older 2D sprite games. I mean, I think they're really special. I'll just show you the demo in the background as I'm talking. Let me turn on the sound. And I'd like to play a lot more of these type of games actually on the channel. John Gold, yes, I do remember Bartender. Absolutely. No Name. I'm glad you asked, No Name. I did want to talk about this today. No Name says, Robbie, what did you think about Tulsi's comments about Hindu phobia in light of the recent violence by the BJP? Well, first of all, No Name, I found it extremely sus. First of all, the posting that she's quoting is from someone reposting an anonymous Facebook post from someone claiming to be Hindu who was harassed by their Muslim cab driver for killing Muslims, for being complicit in killing Muslims. I don't know about you guys, but on its face, that sounds phony to me and like a made-up story. So I don't know if anyone else had that reaction to that, but my gut reaction to that is that sounds fake. So I asked the lady who originally posted that claim, saying I saw this on Facebook about Hindu-phobic harassment. I responded to her and said, how do we know this is real? Where did you get this from? Can you provide us anything that this was real? So for Tulsi to quote tweet that, something that on its face seemed fake to me to begin with, and then for her to basically act like she's under the sort of the thumb of Hindu phobia, I thought was just honestly pathetic, because people have been trying to devise this strawman argument for the past several months that's not worked yet at all, because her own record speaks clearly for itself that she's said many, perhaps dozens of Islamophobic things on record, going all the way back the past 5 years. But people have tried to create this strawman argument that if you're accusing her of being Islamophobic, you must be playing into this Modi, BJP thing, and it's only people who are pro-Pakistan or something, or who are anti-Hindu, who would accuse her of being Islamophobic. That couldn't be more bullshitty. That's such a false argument, and it's sad, because it really is emanating from people who are unwilling to acknowledge that she said some really problematic neocon-ish Islamophobic things, and she still continues to say them. So I'm sorry that people are having such a hard time digesting that and processing that and acknowledging it, because it's led to all these dumbass, crazy strawman arguments where people are just doubling down into the fucking ground to defend all these dumb things that she used to say. So I honestly, it's just sad to me that people have twisted themselves into pretzels over this and can't just acknowledge the truth. I mean, I just don't get it. I really don't. John Gold says, this is actually similar to Afterburner, but in caves. Yes. Afterburner was, I think, one of the more advanced games that first used the 2D sprite, 3D game mechanic, for sure. So I don't know how much more I want to talk about her, but Samira Khan has actually been doing a really good job digging up old things about Tulsi Gabbard that people don't want to address or that they want to ignore. Samira, to her credit, is doing a really good job continually rubbing those things in people's faces and pulling out new things all the time. And I think she's done a rather good job of that. And the recent things that she pulled out was a really embarrassing Fox News special about Islamic terror towards the end of the Obama administration, where they brought on Tulsi Gabbard as a guest to explain why she is against closing Gitmo and how she thinks that these people should be she was endorsing, she didn't directly say this, but she's essentially endorsing an indefinite illegal gulag. She also complains about the Taliban prisoner swap. She also recently, in the last 3 months, said that John Walker Lynn should not be released from jail. So on some level, she is still pushing very strongly some very, very problematic neoconservative paradigms from the Bush era, war on terror paradigms. So, I mean, honestly, I at this point, I really do think it's a litmus test for people who understand why you cannot subscribe to Bush-era paradigms and be anti-war versus the people who don't understand that. There seem to be a lot of people in the anti-war scene who literally talk like they've been brainwashed by the Bush and Dick Cheney era, post 9/11, and still profess being anti-war. It's one of the strangest fucking things I've ever seen in my life, but there seems to be dozens of these people every day trying to come at me, and I honestly have never met anyone in real life who espouses pro-war on terror rhetoric who claims their main issue is anti-war. It seems to be this special type of person who only exists on the internet. I'm not saying these people are fake. I've never met any of them in real life. It's fucking weird. It's really weirdly weird. No news on the hyperspin system, Tom. I think that the guy that I'm trying to get it built by is he's dragging his feet in a way which I don't know if it's going to happen now. So I might need to come across someone else who can do a custom hyperspin build for me. Jose Velasquez, too, says, I don't think Tulsi has any fear. Well, that's interesting, Jose, because she has repeatedly said the reason why she joined the military is because of we were attacked on 9/11, and she wants to go get the enemy who attacked us. So I mean, I can't see any other explanation for that other than extreme paralyzing fear, because unfortunately, anybody who talks that way about retaliating against 9/11 is paralyzed by the fear of 9/11 propaganda. I mean, so I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people who are paralyzed by the fear of 9/11, but she still says this to this day, that she's basically in the military as a response to 9/11. And so I don't know. I don't understand it. Because she's even acknowledged now that she thinks that basically the U.S. government covered up the Saudi role in it and all this stuff. Tom Collector, it'll be absolutely fascinating if Warren endorses Biden, because then it'll just basically prove everything people have suspected about her the whole time. They're critics. That she's a shill, that she was only in there to disrupt Bernie. So I think that that'll be really devastating for some of her supporters that got sucked into thinking that she was like some progressive leftist. Like they're gonna be in for a really rude awakening if she endorses Biden. In some ways, I kind of hope she does, because I want to see all those people get really fucking crushed for how dumb they were for supporting her. I want to see that. I want to see it. It will be embarrassing, and it's a reckoning that needs to come for some of those people, I think. Tara Toddler says she enlisted after she started her political career, like Pete. Yes, that's true. And it also doesn't line up with what she says. Like, even her story about why she joined the military as a response to 9/11, like, doesn't even line up. It doesn't. It's so I'm sorry. I still find her extremely phony in dozens and dozens of areas. And I'm not even talking just about her bizarre mixture of being basically a diet neocon 5 years ago to now being the most present anti-war personality now. I'm not even talking about that. I mean, just in general, a lot of her backstory just doesn't add up. It doesn't. Hey, Peter H. Glad to see you're back. And yeah, in fairness, let's talk about some of the other frontrunners now, since, there are people still out there still calling me a Bernie cultist, which is fucking sad that people need to stoop to that level to double down on their inability to see Tulsi's problems. I mean, it is pathetic, but because that accusation is going around, in fairness, I'll talk about how weak and how poor of a job I think Bernie Sanders is doing right now. He is basically looking worse by the day. He made an ad with him like buddy with Obama, walking around the White House, getting his legislation signed into office by Obama. He was even asked on an interview recently, are the establishment Democrats that you're trying to defeat, does that include Obama, like Obama legacy? And he said no. So I don't know what the fuck he's trying to do. I mean, it just seems like a strategic maneuver to try to cut into some of Biden's voters, maybe. But at the same time, it's like, dude, no one who's like a serious leftist is going to like that shit you're saying or doing. That ad looks really stupid. It looks really bad to be walking around with a war criminal and acting like that's a reason to get votes. Fuck that shit. I mean, it's honestly disgusting. So I was very embarrassed after seeing that ad. And I think at this point, I can't see myself even voting for Bernie in the general if he gets the nomination. And And I will guarantee you he will get worse and less appealing, even if you are a supporter of his now. I guarantee you that between now and the election, he's going to do shit that's going to make you cringe. And Bernie is not the type of fighter that we need him to be. I mean, that's fundamentally the problem that I see moving forward. And the fact that Trump is already outmaneuvering Bernie, and he's saying all these true things about how Warren is still in the race to sabotage him, about how the DNC is sabotaging him, and Bernie's just lying down, not saying any of this stuff. It looks fucking weak. If your opponent in a race was talking about how you were being cheated, and you were being cheated, and then you were not talking about it, that makes you look weak. It just doesn't look good. So, yeah, there's a lot of problems. No, Francisco, I do not think Bernie should pick Warren as his VP. In fact, if he picks anybody who ran against him in his cabinet at all, I absolutely can't vote for him at all. I mean, that's a deal breaker. If he brings Tulsi into his cabinet, can't vote for him. If he brings Warren into his cabinet, can't fucking vote for him. None of those people, if he brought into his cabinet, that would be an absolute deal breaker for me. I can't. I mean, it's pretty simple for me. Volta Vin says, it kind of blew my mind that the DNC went for Biden, not Pete. Biden's mind is decaying exponentially fast these past months. Yeah, it is mind-blowing, isn't it? Unless you consider that the DNC is willing to lose the general so they won't have to allow Bernie to take the nomination. I mean, I honestly don't... And I don't think they would want... Pete's not... He jumped the line. So they give seniority to Biden. They've already basically thrown in the towel. They're purposely going to try to lose this election. So it kind of makes sense, I think. It makes sense why they would pick Biden. I think it's pretty clear at this point they've already decided they're willing to take the hit in another 4 years of Trump. Shane Lindbergh says, I agree with Robbie. Bernie has to get nasty and go on the gangster-style attack. Well, it's like even the Burisma scandal. The fact that Trump brought that to light, even though that was already sort of floating around the media, it's like Bernie already basically told Joe, I don't know and I'm not remembering this exactly 100% accurately, but Bernie kind of gave a pass to Joe on stage and basically told him, like, we're not going to go there. That's like not important. Kind of like how he did to Hillary's emails on the debate stage with him. Jose Velasquez too. I appreciate you trying to give medical advice on this chat, but if anyone's cells stop making insulin, I would hope they consult a medical doctor and not some kind of holistic solution. I do believe in Western medicine, I will admit. I think a lot of it's really fucked up and archaic, but I still believe that it is probably the best solution if your body is not producing enough insulin. You should consult a medical professional immediately. Trish says, I think Sanders has a way of making people look foolish sometimes without directly attacking and sticking to pushing policies. That's true. I agree with that. And then Trish says, but I think the gloves might come off with Trump because he lies like a rug. Yes, I think the gloves will come off. I don't think Bernie's afraid to go at Trump. Even go at him from the jugular. But what bothers me is even the criticisms I've seen Bernie level at Trump are very vague and unspecific and tired criticisms. Calling him a pathological liar and a misogynist is something I've said this over and over again. It's something we've been hearing for the past 3 years. You need a specific thing. Like, in terms of helping out the working class people. Name some specific things of how he's fucked working class people. Name specific things about how he's actually pro-war and lying about being anti-war. and he's wishy-washy and won't actually withdraw the troops even though he keeps talking about it. These are all real things that Bernie could hit Trump over, and I just don't see the specific things being brought up. Now, maybe that will change in the general if Bernie gets a nomination, but at this point, that's looking less and less likely that Bernie is actually going to get the nomination. Fully, I do. No, I don't have a set stream schedule. You're talking to someone who can't schedule a goddamn thing in his life. So, I have a really hard time sticking to specific times on things. So, that might be something that I'll really never be able to offer you guys as a consistent schedule. That's why I am offering all these streams after the fact. You can get access to most of them, even if you don't catch them live. And then if you are not a Patreon subscriber of mine, you get access to almost all of them, 2/3 of them. If you are a Patreon subscriber of mine for $5 a month, you'll get access to all 45 episodes so far after they air by going to my Patreon page. So, yeah, if I had somewhere to go, like a producer or something, if this was like a more pro podcast, I probably could do it on a consistent schedule because then I'd have someone like telling me what to do and when to show up. But right now, this is just at my own convenience. Thank you, Voltavin. I'm glad you think that my tracks on those compilations are awesome. And in case I didn't already make this totally clear, I actually have 3 tracks out right now on different compilations. They all came out within the span of like the last month. One of them is the Neblina. The label Neblina released a compilation called Literal Oasis that I have a track on. It's all made with physical modeling synthesis. The folks over at Does It Bang made a compilation. I have a song on there that's in an NES 8-bit style that I think I already played for you. And I have another track on the Katabatic Collection with a K, Collection 7. That's just kind of like an analog synth, kind of brain dancey track. So there's 3 tracks out. Go check them out. Hope you guys like them. Fully, I do. I have not spoken directly to Pierce lately, but I will check up on him if he was saying things about that. I'm not gonna repeat what you said if it was a Patreon subscriber exclusive episode because he might have intended that to be more private. But I will check up on him. He's a friend of mine. I haven't spoken to him for a few weeks. I'll say it. I'll say, hey, dude, how's it going? Oz whistles. Well, I'm so glad that you think they're brilliant. So I don't. And Oz, I'll give you also a code to watch all of them online, unlimited, too. Because I don't think you bought the box set. In the box set, I slip in a card with an unlimited digital download viewing code. When you buy the DVD set, it's not. I don't usually give that, but I'll obviously any of you guys who bought it, I would happily give that out, and give you an unlimited viewing code for that. The only bummer about the DVDs is part 2 and 3 of A Very Heavy Agenda are in 1080p HD. So the best you're going to get on a DVD is like 540p or something like that. So you are losing a lot of the quality that way. But it's still very watchable on DVD. Hey, Michael, how's it going? I had a really embarrassing incident. I'll tell you guys about this because I just haven't really had a chance to get off my chest. And Michael, I don't know how many times you've experienced this because you've you have a very dialed in hardware gear setup that you've been, mastering for the past many years. Um, so I had my first laptop crash during a live set. Um, happened to me. It hasn't happened to me maybe for like 7-8 years, where my laptop just fully crapped out during a live set. But yeah, it was pretty devastating, disheartening. Um, yeah, and I, you know, it's always something I worry about in the back of my mind because it's a computer. It's like you're playing live off a computer. Computers crash, computers glitch out, unexpected things happen. But since I've gotten into Ableton Live, for the most part, it's been relatively stable and it's always sort of done me well. Except this time, about 2/3 into my set, it started stuttering and fully collapsed, imploded. The audio playback totally stopped. It sucked. And if it was like I had a bigger gig with a more captivated audience, it would have been probably absolutely devastating for me. But luckily, it was kind of at a bar, back room of a bar. People were chatting. It wasn't like it was a little bit more of a casual environment. But yeah, I mean, I should probably talk to you, Michael, about making sure I have my live sessions are like not prone to crashing, because I'm not sure what exactly happened. I think it might have been I was using too many external plugins, even though my processor is still low. But man, that was a bummer. Yeah, and then I also just got like self-conscious that there's a lot of people who probably showed up who've never seen me play live before, and that's like their first impression of me, and that's kind of a bummer. Like I can't change that, the guy whose laptop crashes in the middle of his set. Fully I do. I mean, the way I played it off in the moment was just sort of like shrug my shoulders, and I was just like, oh fuck, computer crash. I closed the lid of my laptop, so I didn't really. There's no way to play it off. It's just like, whoop, set's over. Sorry, everybody. Um, what am I gonna do? Start crying or sweating bullets because I mean, it's just something that can it's just shit happens. It's it's I think it can happen to anyone really. I thought it was also because the room I was playing in was so hot. Some of these Mac laptops, they have very poor ventilation, and even though they're great for music and live music, yeah, in terms of their temperature and staying cool, they're really bad. I mean, and I don't know if does anyone out there have a solution for that? Like I literally sit my laptop on a fan pad to keep it cool, like right as I'm doing this stream with you guys. John Gold, it could have been a false flag attack. Definitely. Someone's trying to demoralize my musical career. The Mossad came and broke my laptop. White Seed, saw the Sophia thread about Tulsi. Really interesting stuff. I thought that was interesting too. Are we talking about the same Sophia, the one who used to be big into Tulsi and who now says she's not? What I found interesting is that she really went after me specifically. She was really going after me hard, and she has now deleted all of her tweets where she was standing for Tulsi Gabbard going after me. So I don't think there's probably no way to get any of those tweets back, but I would be curious to see what she was saying to me that I couldn't remember, or like how she was defending Tulsi, because I guess now she agrees with people like me and Samira. She even quote tweeted Samira today. I don't really know who she is, honestly. I just know that she was sort of associated with Nico House's network, She's very young. I think she's like only 18. But she definitely tried to go after Abby too. She was one of those people posting that Michael Brooks clip of Abby saying she didn't understand why Tulsi was running against Bernie in the race, and Abby also saying other reasons why she didn't like Tulsi. So Fia, as far as I know, was the distributor of that clip. And I believe that was a clip basically where Tulsi's own little spies were looking for ways for me and Abby to slip up and say things that maybe looked bad, taken as just individual clips without actually addressing the totality of the shit we were saying. It's easier to sort of weaponize a little smear clip than it is to actually address the issue someone's bringing up. So I can understand why they wanted to do something that pathetic and low blow. It makes sense because the things that Tulsi has said, you can't really address them without acknowledging that they're problematic. So, sure, Peter. Yeah, I could talk about it. Yeah, I already know that people from inside her campaign who are paid officials are pissed off at me and Abby. I already know that for a fact. I'm not going to talk about how I know that, but I do. But just trust me when I say that I know that. And it's sad because the things we were raising, still need to be addressed. It's not like they're just all of a sudden it's all reset now, that it's fine. She doesn't say these things anymore. She's still saying problematic things. She still hasn't explained why she was conflicted about torture only 5 years ago and brought up a Dick Cheney ticking time bomb scenario. All these things need to be seriously addressed, not just her explanation for why she changed her views on gay marriage and gays. As far as I know, that's one of the only things she's actually fully addressed. And even in that instance, it's still not fully convincing to me. So I'm not saying that any of these explanations are going to be convincing. I'm just saying she still needs to do it. Yes, Francisco, she deleted all those tweets. Shane, yes, I can get Abby on MAME politics. She's going to come up here fairly soon. I don't want to say exactly when, but she will be up here and we will be playing MAME politics together. It's going to be fucking great. Andrew Wajas, you should open up your advanced power settings and try reducing your maximum processor state if the PC is crashing. Yes, I think that almost sounds like counterintuitive advice, but I agree with you. I think that the processor is getting too hot, and at that point it'll spike, and then it almost doesn't matter how fast it is because it'll spike, and it'll like just max out. Because it's like at a certain point, if it goes above a certain heat threshold, it's not going to matter if your processor was set faster or not. It's actually going to hurt the performance. So I think that's actually smart thinking. I didn't even really think about that. I'm going to try that. John, of course I can get you on a MAME politics, dude. When are you going to be in California? Or we got to figure out a way to do online play. So if you had a Switch, I know fairly easily how we could play some like 2-player Mario Maker or something like that. I don't have a PS4 anymore, unfortunately, so we can't do like Red Dead. But there's got to be a way we can play something together on here. So the thing Samira posted today, in case anyone's wondering, if you don't follow me on Twitter, Samira posted 3 clips or examples of Tulsi defending Gitmo and also going beyond the neoliberal Democrats and actually taking a right-wing position saying that we shouldn't close it. These are too dangerous of people, even though they've never been charged with a crime and there's no proof they've committed crimes shown to us. So that's what Samira had dug up, are 3 examples of Tulsi shilling for Gitmo in 2015. Andrew Gunner. Yes, all that stuff is true. You just mentioned Bernie supported overthrowing Saddam in 1998, which was, by the way, a neocon PNAC construction. They lobbied people to create that legislation. Hillary Clinton, this is actually the smartest thing Hillary Clinton did in the last debate. She attacked Bernie for that. And I was like, damn, she knows about that shit? Like, that's good Oppo research to try to attack Bernie from the left on his overthrowing Saddam vote in 1998, even though she wasn't in office, so she probably would have voted for it too. That was, I honestly thought, hella smart talking points used against him. Andre also says he supported bombing Serbia. He supported all war budgets under George Bush. He fought to keep Lockheed Martin manufacture weapons of war in Vermont. I've heard of all of those things except for the third thing. Can you elaborate on when you say he supported all war budgets under George Bush? Do you mean George W. Bush? I'm assuming that's what you mean. And if you mean that, I'm a little skeptical of that claim on its face, that he supported all of the war budgets under George W. Bush. Now, I'm not saying that I think it's not possible. I'm just not aware of the full scope of what you're talking about. So if you can post a link in here or something, that would be helpful. David, yeah, I've heard a lot of weaponized coronavirus theories, like the U.S. deployed it. Absolutely. For sure. That Israel deployed it is another theory that I've heard. It seems to be going back and forth to, did China deploy it, did the U.S. deploy it, or did Israel deploy it? That's what people seem to be speculating about. I don't really know. I think it's too soon. There's just not enough evidence we can, a normal researcher can gather to say that this is an engineered bioweapon. So I think people jumping out with that and being so super sure of that are being irresponsible. It's very speculative, which is fine. I mean, you could speculate about that. I just don't think there's any convincing evidence for that yet. And I actually saw James Corbett going on Jason Burmis, and I thought he did a rather good, rational segment about coronavirus and why that even if it doesn't end up infecting people and it doesn't turn into this pandemic level event that they're making us worry about, that the infrastructure itself will cause the real damage. Like the military shutting things down, the government shutting things down, private companies shutting things down, making people, not going to work, travel being restricted, the economy crashing. I feel like we are in store for those real things. And I feel like those real things, as Corbett was saying, will actually cause more damage than the virus infecting people itself will. JNNX says, Hillary is no slouch when it comes to Oppo research. Yeah, ain't that the truth? They really pulled out all the stops for that one, didn't they? They even got a GOP mega donor to baton pass them a fucking dirty dossier about written by Chris Steele. It's a pretty masterful feat. And then they take all the blame. And they're happy taking all the blame for that, which is interesting as well. Emu sings, Robbie, what you said about Tulsi yesterday, not calling out the war machine enough, not going into the gory details, kind of resonated with me. She should, and it's a little suspect she's not. Well, Emu sings, there could be two explanations for that. One, she's still active military. So she literally there is military law on the books that are very vague, which clearly state that you cannot be disruptive in terms of your criticism of the military. So there is a certain undefinable, vague, not clear limitation on how much she can say against the military. And now I'm not making any excuses for her in saying that. And on the other side, most anti-war activists that I know who used to be active military, Mike Preisner, who you may know is Abby's partner, he's one of the most outspoken critics of the war that I've ever heard, who has many, many personal stories about terrible things that he saw and participated in. And this is somehow inexplicably missing from all of Tulsi's own statements about her military service. She talks vaguely about the horrors of war, but I have not heard her talk about anything involving a specific incident she was involved in where she saw horrors of war inflicted on the Iraqi people. And I am very curious as to why that is. Is it because she's still active and the military law prevents her from speaking out too aggressively? I don't know if that's the reason. I think that what she's doing is she's purposely eliminating the moral opposition to war because she wants to make her anti-war message compatible with people who are generally very conservative, selfish individuals who only oppose war because they don't want our money being spent in the Middle East. So she needs to bridge the gap between the people who have no moral basis and only selfish reasons for opposing war, and then those who have a moral basis for opposing war. Seems there's a lot of people out there who believe morally we shouldn't be, killing 1 million Iraqis, who are somehow willing to accept her version of anti-war, but yet they don't notice that that's missing from her anti-war rhetoric. It's sort of the moral component, and also the damage and specific examples of damage that we inflicted on Middle Eastern people. Trish says, or no, Emu Singh says, doesn't she also talk about Salafism as a religion instead of an ideology? I'm not sure how to answer that question specifically, Emu, but she does. She has updated her Islamophobic Sam Harris-like rhetoric on Islam, whereas before, so if you watch all these little clips from 2015, she talks about radical Islam being the problem throughout the world and how it fuels all terrorism around the world. Sounds virtually identical to Sam Harris. Now later she updated and evolved and rebranded that rhetoric to only say Salafism and Wahhabism. Now, I believe that she understands on some level that just talking about radical Islam is too much of an Islamophobic neocon dog whistle. Even though maybe inside she still agrees with that paradigm, she understands that somehow just saying radical Islam does sort of raise red flags that you are dog whistling to neocons and Islamophobes. She's smart enough to know that. So she's updated that rhetoric, and now she makes it more compatible with this bullshitty version of anti-war, which is Salafists and Wahhabists are the most dangerous force we need to defeat. Fuck that shit. This is all about defeating the American empire. So I don't have any patience for people who want to talk about that all goddamn day long. I mean, it's really suspect to me. So in a general sense, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much more I can say about that. Well, Oz whistles. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word you just brought up, but I think what you're saying is that all religions have an extreme or fundamentalist component to them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's sort of part of my point when I talk about this is it's like, why is it because someone's fundamentalist or extremist Islamic that they're somehow our enemy all of a sudden? Like there's probably thousands, if not millions of people who maybe would consider themselves fundamentalist Islamic who don't commit violence against other people and would never think of doing anything like that. So it just kind of, yeah. So I didn't mean this whole podcast to turn into a Tulsi bashing session. Jose Velasquez, too. I don't think there is any peace candidate in the general election. And there rarely is. I mean, rarely. It's a rare thing when there's a peace candidate in any of the general Democrat or Republican primaries. I think you have to seek out third party to vote for a true peace candidate. And even their peace credentials. I mean, I don't know what Howie Hawkins and Gloria La Riva, like, I don't know their full foreign policy spread of all their ideas. For all I know, I would disagree fundamentally on some of their beliefs as well. I don't know. But I would guarantee that they both probably have more of a peace position than anyone running in either Democrat or Republican side right now. Emu sings, to answer your question, I don't know. Part of me doesn't think Bernie's really in this to win it. That's that. I think on some level, that's what it seems like to me. But I don't. That's just my gut feeling. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's just losing steam, losing energy. I mean, he is 78 years old. I don't know. Oz Whistle says all empires are the same, all just as toxic. Well, right now in this current iteration of history, the U.S. empire is by far the largest and has the most military presence and tentacles across the world. So that's why I focus on the U.S. empire. I don't believe in this concept of, to even remotely equate Russia to the American empire. There are a lot of leftists who like to say Russian imperialism, Iranian imperialism. It's just like a drop in the bucket compared to what the U.S. empire is right now. Potted rodent. Tulsi has been the only one that brings up neocons and neoliberals, but in a vague sense also. Well, I actually thought it was problematic the way she equated neocons and neoliberals. She said neocons and neolibs. I don't personally equate them together because I think neoliberal is defined by an economic sort of, internationalist, interventionist point of view, but it's more defined by your economic views rather than your foreign policy views. Neoconservative is defined by a very hawkish foreign policy mentality. Potted rodent, can you elaborate on that? Because I've seen other people saying that Howie Hawkins has jumped on the Russiagate bandwagon, as you've just stated here. But I think that there are varying degrees to doing that. People also accused Paul Jay, who I'm a really big fan of and I have a lot of respect for, of also jumping on the Russiagate bandwagon. And I frankly didn't agree with people's characterization of him jumping on that bandwagon. I just saw him as someone who wasn't taking the same position as Aaron Mate and Michael Tracy. To me, there's a big difference between jumping on the Russiagate bandwagon and also not subscribing to their variation of the Russiagate debunking narrative. So, I mean, I'm pretty, much in the Tracy, Aaron Mate camp on that, although I feel like their focus is very narrow. But please let us know what Howie Hawkins said about Russiagate. A Catch 22 says Scoop Jackson is like the godfather of the neocons. Yeah, in terms of being someone actively in office, he was one of the first major conduits for deep state neocon insiders. Absolutely. That's where Elliot Abrams got his start. I believe that's where Robert Kagan got his start. A lot of these neocons cut their teeth basically being puppeteers for Scoop Jackson. Yeah, please say whatever you guys want to say about Howie Hawkins. I'm very, very unfamiliar with his actual policies. I just know that he's running as the Green Party candidate. That's really all I know about him. But that doesn't mean he's a peace candidate just because he's running as a Green. I mean, as we saw with the Libertarian Party, they switched from having staunchly anti-war candidates like Harry Brown and Ron Paul to having people like Gary Johnson and Bob Barr. I mean, Gary Johnson said some neocon bullshit. Bob Barr is pretty much a fucking straight up neocon to me. So Yeah, I don't know how the party itself has transformed in terms of the green, but I wouldn't be surprised if Howie Hawkins had some pretty bad positions. Peter H., what did he mean by interfered? Because I think this is the trap people get into. It's like, did Russia interfere in our political process? Well, almost all the things the media are saying about how they interfered, maybe there's some of them have kernels of truth, but did they actually have a real effect? Probably, very likely, that it didn't. Now, at the same time, RT America was a channel trying to elicit a certain response from the American public, criticizing the United States. Is that interfering? I mean, how would you characterize that? I was under no illusions, and neither was Abby, that when she first started working for RT, that Russia had some of their own agenda. For hiring anybody, not just her, but for hiring anybody. So that doesn't mean that I think that the Russian interference is a problem or it's like a serious thing. I just think that it's such a vague, all-encompassing term that you have to talk about it in a more specific way. Thank you, Peter H., for sharing that information with us about Howie Hawkins. I'm not aware with that. I wasn't aware of any of that. Honestly, probably the most impressive vote, we're talking about Bernie having a bad track record. The most impressive vote that I know that he cast was against the Patriot Act. But in the House, I believe that he wasn't. I mean, there was a lot of other people who did too. In the Senate, the only person to vote against the Patriot Act that I know of is Russ Feingold, which is pretty surprising. Some of his staffers also got infected with anthrax. Shocker. One of the only guys to vote against the Patriot Act who was, saying things against the Bush administration about the Patriot Act, a lot of his staffers had to get checked for anthrax, and some of them were infected. Absolutely. Now, the official story says, well, this happened because the ventilation system, or the mail that came in to Daschle, somehow bled into particles from the open envelope, bled into the ventilation system into Russ Feingold's office. I'm not so sure I trust that. I'm not so sure I believe that FBI conclusion there. There are a lot of mysterious aspects of the anthrax attacks where people got infected with anthrax where no letter was present. And we're just supposed to believe that it all came from the same series of letters. Well, I don't think the FBI ever looked into the idea of someone walking around with anthrax and distributed it at various locations. I don't think they examined that, and I think they probably should. There's really no explanation for how a child got infected with anthrax who worked for Dan Rather. It just doesn't make sense. Ottilie Lundgren, the 92-year-old lady who died from anthrax. Oh, she got it from a mail sorter? She lived all the way in Connecticut, and she just died because the mail sorter got anthrax in her mail. Really? We're supposed to believe that shit? I don't buy it. There's so much more to the anthrax attacks out there. And clearly, the investigation was not just botched, it was purposely saddled and not allowed to actually be investigated properly. No, Andre, you did not miss Anthrax Part 2. There are various reasons why it's been really held up. Yeah. Hopefully it's still coming, but I'm not going to say anything about when it's coming. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Peter H., yeah, that sounds... What you're saying about Howie Hawkins is starting to sound increasingly bad. So, If I said anything like really, if I said Howie Hawkins is a peace candidate earlier, I obviously was saying that talking completely out of school because I just assumed, well, he's a green candidate, so he must be. But it sounds like what you're saying, Peter, that he's got a lot of bad positions. John says, "Hey Robbie, have you ever heard of Project Jefferson as it is related to the anthrax attacks?" No, I have not actually, John. Please let me know what that is. I'm curious what Project Jefferson is. Um, Obviously, all this coronavirus stuff happening right now has made me think about Operation Dark Winter, which is not about an anthrax attack, but is about a terrorist smallpox release that basically shuts down the United States and creates martial law and every hospital to be bottlenecked and flooded in overcapacity. This was a war game exercise that was done in the year 2001, right before the anthrax attacks, creepily enough. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently. How right before 9/11, we were basically being conditioned and prepared for a mass pandemic event. And then 9/11 happened. Did you know Donald Rumsfeld and Jerome Hauer were both working on a mandatory new smallpox vaccine that all Americans would have had to get vaccinated for smallpox, just like your parents did with that smallpox scar? Did you know that was almost went through? Trish, I did get your DM about my bad back. Thank you so much for that. Um, I am I'm currently trying a bunch of different options. Yes, please, John, send me some documentation about that. JNNX says, but she was 92. Yes, Adelie Lundgren, the last victim who died from anthrax infection from a U.S. made bioweapon batch of anthrax, died at 92 years old. White Seed says, if Bernie doesn't go full attack mode at the next debate, I will completely question if he even wants to win. Me too. Me too. I will do. I mean, I will too. Absolutely. I'm in full agreement with you there. I just realized the sound from this game has been playing the whole time. I hope it hasn't been too bothersome. Oh, just some other things in the news I wanted to mention to you guys. General Jack Keane, who helped us found the Institute for the Study of War with Kim Kagan. General Jack Keane is now receiving a Medal of Freedom from Donald Trump. So, as I already said on Twitter, Trump has the Kagan family brain bug now. He has actually multiple people from the Institute for the Study of War consulting with him. I've forgotten other names off the top of my head, but General Jack Keane is definitely one of those people. This has all been documented. There's no question that he was one of the original founders of the Institute for the Study of War. On the About page for Kim Kagan's Institute for the Study of War, it talks all about how he was instrumental in helping found the think tank. And it's pretty crazy that it's just barely being talked about. Trump is still this anti-neocon hero, right? And he's giving a extremely dangerous neocon think tanker who's chomping at the bit for war with Iran on a daily basis a Medal of Freedom. So thank you. Thank you, Trump. Terror Toddler. Yes, I did see Daniel McAdams' piece on the Quincy Institute. Pretty damning. Um, yeah, I did see that. Definitely. I don't know if I take completely the same position he does, but I do think it's just a pipe dream to think that a Koch and Soros funded anti-war think tank is actually going to like stop war. Wow, Peter H. Is Adam Kokesh actually running for the Libertarian presidential candidate? He didn't get nominated, did he? Like, he's not actually the candidate, right? That would be fucking nuts. Wow. Um, that guy is really, really sketchy. Uh, wow. Yikes. So I guess the Libertarian Party's just destroyed now, if that's the case. Oz whistles. That's disturbing. That toilet paper is already gone at your supermarket shelves. Yeah, I don't want people to freak out, but I do think it's never a bad idea to stock up with supplies you might need if you can't leave your house for like a month. Because I think ultimately that's going to be what might be the most damaging here is like a mandatory self quarantine kind of thing. Adam Kokesh is just a really fucking creepy dude. Um, I'll just say I think he's extremely misogynist and a creep. He interviewed my sister randomly at some conference like 5 years ago or something, and it seemed like a relatively cordial interview. Like he didn't seem to be like going after or anything. But then he titled the video on YouTube "Abby Martin rides topless with Pootie Poot," and I was just thinking, what a fucking creepy piece of shit. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, frankly. That's all I'm gonna say for now. But yeah, guy's a major fucking creep. Peter H says Kokish was terrible yesterday too. He sounded like he was on Ambien. That's funny. Like the Plinkett jokes about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Something on. Something on. Hornberger 2020. Who the hell's Hornberger? Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Whitney Webb is doing some interesting things about coronavirus. You should probably check out. Uh, there was a $7.76 billion bill to combat coronavirus passed, and Whitney Webb points out that it gives over $1 billion for USAID, a CIA front, and the State Department, among other interesting features. And also, I mean, is it even that? I mean, you guys already know this. If Alex Jones was not a Trump diehard sycophant and had his head up all the way up Trump's ass right now, Alex Jones would be talking about that we should be preparing for martial law and for Trump to sign an executive order to institute martial law in this country to like start all these quarantine procedures. So that's really interesting to me, is that because Alex Jones is pro-Trump, it has a significant shift on the way that people, especially conspiracy people, are talking about it. I've actually seen some of the more conspiratorial people who are talking about coronavirus, who are pro-Trump still. Some of the most conspiratorial coronavirus accounts online are pro-Trump. That's really fascinating to me. That's an unprecedented thing, that people speculating about a bioweapon false flag attack in this country would still see Trump as some kind of heroic force to fight the deep state at the same time. It's truly remarkable. I don't know how you could hold both thoughts simultaneously in your head. Obnob says, honestly, a quarantine thing in the U.S. or a quarantine thing from Trump could just destroy the left in the U.S. How do you mean, Obnobs? I just want you to spell that out a little bit more. Andrew Gunnar, I haven't read the whole thing. Andrew Gunnar says, have you read the World Health Organization's Pandemic Exercise Event 201 from 2019 in cooperation with the Gates Foundation, of course, LOL. I mean, I did read and talk about when that was initially released, but I did not read the whole thing. But it's very creepy. Very, very creepy. John Gold, explain to us what Netanyahu did to the elections in Israel. From what I saw, he did a press conference saying that Arab-Israeli votes didn't count, and that it was only Zionist votes that counted. Or that was the synopsis I got. I don't actually know what he literally said. So can you tell us what it was? Obnobs, okay, I understand your point. I mean, sadly, I think the right-wing paleocon militia people were better equipped to organize and combat a martial law-like situation pre-Trump. That's how weird it is. I'm not saying that would have been valuable in stopping totalitarianism, but they were better. What I'm just saying is that they are much better organized than the left is right now to combat something like a martial law like scenario. Well, Obnobs, I think what's happening here in this country that you're already seeing is a complete marginalization of the actual left, because there's the usefulness in the right constantly calling like someone like Bernie Sanders a communist, or even saying that the Washington Post is radical leftist. The more you hear that, that's designed to actually marginalize and make disappear the real left. That's who they're actually afraid. They're not afraid of the neoliberals as much as they are the real left. And you could see that they're afraid of them because they siphon their rhetoric and use it for their own agenda and weaponize it. They know how powerful some of that rhetoric is. That's why Sebastian Gorka uses terms like the fake news industrial complex. That's why they use terms like the deep state, which is traditionally a left critique of institutional power. These are very clever things the Trump administration and his loyalists are doing to further marginalize and disappear the real left. So this is, and I think it's very effective. So I think that the real left is pretty much not present in the debate because all we have are these identitarian, fake leftists, these fake woke people, who are constantly pretend like they care about people of color, but we're okay blowing up, hundreds of thousands of Muslims, turning them into human hamburger patties under Obama. They thought that was fine. And now they pretend like they're all super woke and they're super left. These people aren't left. They're phony. And it's basically continues to just further marginalize the real left. Voltavin, yep. Combating martial law in the United States would mean going to prison for decades. Absolutely. Now, it depends on what you mean combating. If you mean just sort of standing your ground, I think there are some militias who could have effectively stood their ground against a sort of martial law encroachment. Now, obviously, as soon as it gets to any shots fired or anything like that, yeah, those people are going to, they're probably going to try to kill him. I mean, I don't know if it would actually they would even be jailed. They'd be labeled enemy combatants at that point. Let me take a quick little boys' room break. I'll be right back. And I'm probably going to wrap this episode in 5 minutes. So if you guys have any questions, any other topics you wanted me to address, please mention them now. Thanks, John. Leave me a tip if you can afford to. So yeah, as always, remember if you want to get access to all of the episodes of MAME Politics after they are done streaming, I have locked and hidden about 1/3 of them for Patreon subscribers only. You can get access to those after they stream by becoming a Patreon subscriber of mine at patreon.com/Robbie Martin. And eventually I'd like to do this live in front of a live audience. So I know that right now we're still relatively small. We're in the infancy of this show. But I kind of like to keep it pretty exclusive. So I think it would be fun to do a show in San Francisco at some point to an audience of just 20 or 30 people. So help spread the word. And obviously, love to hang out with some of you guys if you can make it. There will be an Abby episode of MAME Politics fairly soon. I can guarantee you that. What else? I guess that's it. I don't really know. I don't really know what else I had to say today. I feel like I definitely turned into a little bit too much of a Tulsi bashing hour, um, which is fine. I mean, it's just not fully what I intended to focus on today, but I'm glad I got some of that off my chest. Thank you again for joining me and conversing with me in the chat. It's really fun. And yeah, really thankful that all you guys are here to check out what I'm doing, and your support in any fashion is greatly appreciated. Whether you're a donor, subscriber, or you just come here to watch it and help spread the word, it's all I'm all really thankful for that. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody.